And we're back with Record Live on another. Well, it's a little bit cloudy here, Zanita. I don't know what it's like where you are, but here in Sydney, where Mark and I are, it's a little bit overcast, but it's a beautiful day, a beautiful Wednesday. And we're very happy and privileged to have Dr. Mark Turnbull with us today. Welcome to Record Live.
Thank you, Jared and Sunita. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Dr. Mark, some years ago at Adventist Record, we told your story. And I'm going to put that in the link for those that are interested in reading. Obviously, after the interview, we want them to watch it, but it'll be there for reference in the comments. And we told your story about some of your life, how you had given your life to God, I guess, and how you had devoted a good part of the last few years to a remote area in Vanuatu. Can you just tell us a little bit about that journey? We've titled today's broadcast Tales of a Missionary Doctor, and I guess it's a very foreign experience to many of us. And so can you just tell us a little bit about what your life looks like today?
Thank you, Jared. So just going back a bit in time, my wife and I really wanted to be involved in mission, but it was a long journey of preparation in which we were very confused and not really finding our purpose in life. But after qualifying as a doctor, my main thing was I wanted to be involved in mission. And so I actually arranged with our Adventist Church headquarters to spend a bit of time in a mission station, which was in Lesotho in Southern Africa. And I was working with someone called Dr. Wilbert Hurlo. And it was just, I was really immersed in that mission situation. And so I wanted to be involved in something similar, closer to Australia, and ended up going to Vanuatu, northern Vanuatu, where I'm the only doctor in the province. And I'm the only doctor, and I'm also a pilot. So we have an aircraft that we fly into bush airstrips there. So basically, I'm a volunteer of the government, but being an Adventist, we're involved in mission just because God has called us to be involved in as active church members. So we ended up being involved in planning a school. My wife was asked by the Vanuatu Mission to establish a school, which is now up and going. It has 90 plus students, and we're now getting into secondary level with the students. Because I'm the only doctor in the province, we deal with a lot of cases. That's a rough sort of intro to what's happening there in Vanuatu.
What's it like being the only doctor? I imagine even in a hospital, it's quite intense. Nurses and other people around you. Like, what is that like?
Well, being in a remote area is difficult as it is, because we don't have many blood tests. We don't have access to x-rays at all in the province. So there's a lot of the normal medical process is just completely absent. It isn't there. So it means that you've got to be good at taking a history and got to be able to adapt to the situation, do what you can with what you've got. But because we've got the aircraft, we can fly people out if they're getting serious. And being the only doctor is challenging in that there are certain cases that are just really hard to manage. And so, we have to get them out as soon as possible, because we can't deal with everything there, obviously. But we do handle a lot of the big cases in Toba province. We get called on to deal with a lot of the big cases.
What's the sort of common ailments that people have that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis? Like out in remote Vanuatu, I'm not sure, many of us go to the doctor for cold or flu. We might have, need a working from home certificate or a pass to not go to school for the day. What kind of things are you seeing, regularly? And what are some of the issues facing the people who live out there?
Well, we're just seeing absolutely everything that you can possibly see. When we first got there, there was a lot more sort of infectious type things, which is still happening. Lots of malaria and lots of skin diseases. But Jared, we're starting to see more lifestyle diseases coming in. So as time passes by, we're seeing a change in what's happening in the culture, because in the past there wasn't too many people eating sort of processed foods. It was more what we call island food over there, which is like just roots, vegetables, and fruits and nuts and seeds and stuff. And a lot of people eating fish and seafood, but not much meat in general. So almost vegetarian. It's just kind of on occasion when they can get some meat. So basically, they've been living on fairly healthy diets in the past, and but when they go to town, they end up eating a lot more of the processed foods, and then now we got different type of sicknesses coming out now. So yeah, it's really a change. The lifestyle change has brought a change in the kind of diseases that we have. Now we're getting a lot more diabetes, a lot of hypertension, lots of strokes. Things are shifting drastically in Vanuatu, and being there during this moment in time it's been possible for us to see the change from the diseases from the old days, swapping over to the diseases for the new metabolic syndrome and things like that. So we're having to shift our treatments too. We're having to focus more on wellness treatments because of that. Yeah.
You'll never forget going into the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and they had a plane come in with boxes and boxes of Maggi noodles. So this was a really remote place, but they were getting more access to the highly processed food, and I guess they were fairly cheap, and so they were rejecting some of those. And it's a big issue that I'm quite happy that our church is tackling right across the Pacific. 10,000 Toes and programs like that. But there's plans, since it's a nice join here, Mark, there's plans to do a wellness center or like a center of influence in the area. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we get into some of the other things of your story? I know this is a very large focus for you and for the mission to get this center of influence up and going and lifestyle and address some of these lifestyle things. Can you tell us a little bit about the plans in that space?
Yeah, basically, the Vanuatu mission has got a strategic plan in place to put in 2 wellness centers in the next quinquennium. So it's kind of like a church thing to a church plan to put in wellness centers. And because I'm interested in this, I contacted the mission and I said, well, why don't we do this? Because there is a huge need for wellness. And so that's what happened. We ended up making a plan. With the Vanuatu mission has sort of made this their baby. And so the Vanuatu mission wants to plant a wellness center up in the area where I'm based, which is in Gawa. And so this is something that my wife and I have been praying for a long time. We really want to be involved in this from way back. And so, the location of this is going to be, it's in a beautiful location. It's in adjacent to a national park. And it's in a location that's quite, very attractive. But we got a mission focus in what we're doing. We're wanting to do this, not sort of as a commercial thing, but as totally to help people who are battling with lifestyle diseases. So it's starting to gain traction. We have secured a property to make it happen. And so we're the make it happen people, my wife and I. And so, that's where we're heading. It's starting to gain traction now. Yeah.
It sounds really exciting. I think there's a few wellness kind of center of influences coming up in Australia and America and other countries, but they all kind of have their own little niche. Like, is there something specific that you're going to carry out there, or what are you hoping for that to do?
Oh, well, I think we're going to be focusing a lot on hydrotherapy, because we're actually situated right next to a beautiful waterfall. The island of Gower is known for its water. There's a special kind of music that the ladies, the local women, make with their hands in the water. It's called water music, and it's very unique. If you ever get a chance, jump on YouTube and type in Gower water music, and you'll see how they do this. It's the most incredible thing to see. The island of Gower itself, I believe that in history, that name was handed down from Spanish, which from the word aqua, which means water, because it's the second largest lake in the Pacific, in the South Pacific. Is on the top of our island. We got this active volcano right in the middle of the island, with the second largest lake in the Pacific surrounding this volcano, and then the largest waterfall in the South Pacific coming over the cliff as it goes down towards the ocean. And then the name of the island is Aqua. Well, it's Gower, but it's Aqua. It's kind of like modified version of the old Spanish or Portuguese for water. And then the island is known for its water music, so it would make sense for it to be an island where you go for water treatment. So we're planning to do hydrotherapy in connection with sort of natural approaches, wellness, lifestyle changes, and all of this in a national park setting, with a beautiful view of the ocean and of the waterfall. So that's the plan.
Sounds amazing. And I know hydrotherapy is one of those things that the Adventist Church has done since the very beginning, pretty much. You know, the sand across the road from the Wurrunga estate there, the sand started with hydrotherapy being a big part of its business. So, that's a very cool.
Hydrotherapy has a very solid physiological basis. The only reason that it sort of became unpopular was because of the tedious aspect of it. It's quite hard to implement, and having to heat a lot of water and use a lot of water. But it really is effective in certain situations, and particularly with problems to do with circulation. And so we've been using it to great avail with some with some diabetics who need hydrotherapy to restore normal circulation in their feet, because you've heard of the 10,000 Toes Project. Well, that's basically a plan to prevent all these diabetic ulcers that's leading to amputation of not just toes, but in reality, it's actually whole legs being chopped off all over the Pacific. The diabetes epidemic in the Pacific is much worse than it is in Australia. The worst country for diabetes is, I think it's Samoa, Western Samoa, American Samoa. But all of the Pacific countries have a lot of diabetes, and so Vanuatu included. So, and I've seen so many of my patients. The problem with the hotter climates is when you get an ulceration in your feet, it gets out of control very quickly. And so it's just so tragic seeing people, my patients, evacuating them to Santo or Vila, and then they come back with one of their legs chopped off. And it's pretty discouraging to see someone losing their leg. It's pretty discouraging, because then they can't get to the toilet even. You see them crawling on the ground to get things when the family's out. The other week, my wife went to visit one of our patients that had an amputation, and she's quite well cared for in her home. But that day, her family had gone somewhere, and my wife found her crawling along the ground, getting stuff, food to eat and things like that. It's quite a discouraging thing to see. And yet that lady, yeah, she probably could have saved her leg if she'd had a wellness center to go to. And yeah, we just want to help these people. There's so many of them getting amputations now. In Australia, you have probably a better medical system, maybe better response to diabetic ulcers, and as a result, probably end up with less amputations. But in Vanuatu, there is a tendency to amputate quite quickly because I guess they've seen so many cases going wildly out of control. And yeah, so there seems to be a very high proportion of people getting amputations in Vanuatu. That's what I can say from observation. So yeah, it's a really serious problem. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, what has been?
Go ahead, Zanita.
What has been? I was going to ask what has been probably more of the difficult side of your job. It's probably been seeing all of those things, but what has been like the most rewarding parts of your role, as well as the most difficult, if you haven't already answered that?
Well, you know, we're involved in so many things, and I've had such a huge variety of patients, and it's so gratifying when you work with patients that do recover. And we've had a lot of people recently who have had really good results from our lifestyle approach. You know, the Adventist health message is very winsome. It's very powerful. And using simple treatments together with a change in lifestyle, it really does work. As long as you nip it in the bud, you get it before it gets out of control. And so it's very gratifying to see people change. And you know, I've had patients crying, you know, crying with joy, just thanking me profusely for helping them. We've had patients who have been had severe hepatitis and kidney disease, kidney failure patients who have recovered almost miraculously from that because of using very careful approaches to help them through their illness. I also do a lot of obstetrics and babies being born all the time. It's gratifying when you see people's lives being saved, mothers and babies. Lots of accidents, injuries. I also do hernia repairs. It's very gratifying to see someone walking who after they've had a very serious hernia. Yeah, we've had so many blessings on the medical side, but also on training young people, because I'm training young people with me, and we've got teachers that we're training. We've got builders that we're training. We've got volunteers from Queensland who are with us and who are involved in the building aspect of the school. And so what they're doing with those young people is just amazing. And we're all involved in our local church, which is just really buzzing with activity. It's a really mission-focused church, and we got really good fellowship. So there's so many aspects. We've also adopted two local children, a boy and a girl, separate families. And it's a pleasure to work with them, to see their lives changing and seeing people baptized, seeing people giving their hearts to the Lord. All of it is such a blessing in so many ways.
I was going to ask Dr. Mark how you, because you mentioned your placement, your medical placement is there for the government. You're the only doctor in the region. I was going to ask a bit more about how your faith and your personal Adventism blends with your role as a medical professional. I assume, the government may not want you proselytizing. That's often the case with people. But how you find space for your faith in your work?
Jared, in Australia, I worked as a doctor in Australia. It's pretty hard to be very sort of religious in your express your faith as a doctor. Very difficult. But in Vanuatu, it's not the case. In Vanuatu, particularly where I'm the only doctor in the province, I pray with all my patients every day. And like my inpatients, I always pray for them before I operate them. And so I'm very open about my faith, and I talk to them about one of my main things, our flying doctor service, we call it Wings of Hope. And so I really believe that hope is the first medicine that we need to give to people when they're sick. And I've seen this. I've seen patients who are very ill, like just a couple of weeks back, a lady who had a postpartum hemorrhage, bleeding very severely, blood pressure dropping away and her pulse racing, very, going into shock, blacking out. I had all my staff working on IV lines and resuscitating her and working on the physical side of it. And I was busy communicating with her, trying to assure her that she was going to be okay, because I really believe in the power of hope and encouragement. And it's so important. The first thing somebody wants to know when they're sick is there hope for me? If they've had a stroke, their first question is, in their mind, is there hope for me? Am I going to be able to pull through? Am I going to get better? Is there a future for me? Somebody who's got an injury, the first thing they want to know is there hope that I can recover from this injury? So regardless of what your problem is, the first medicine that you need is hope. And so that's what we try to deliver, is hope up front, try and give people encouragement. And even somebody who's actually failing, somebody who's deteriorating, it doesn't help to not give them hope. It's not beneficial to make them feel hopeless. And so that's what we try to do, is give people hope primarily. So yeah, that's a big feature of what we're doing. We're praying with people every day in every single patient room, and praying them before we do the operation. So yeah, as for giving Bible studies or something like that, we don't get into that, but we're sharing our faith more in the form of encouragement. And yeah, encouragement is the main thing, I think. Yeah.
That's really cool to hear. I think there's also been a lot of studies, and you might have seen a lot of studies done on how hope actually benefits one's physical body and it heals. So it's cool to hear that from your perspective. But I understand that you have a lot of faith now, but you weren't necessarily raised a Christian. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your journey?
I was raised as a Sunday keeping a Roman Catholic, and my family were pretty good at going to church on Sundays, but we were not really into the Bible at all. We didn't have any understanding of the Bible. We didn't have any sort of structured belief system or have any reason for what we were doing or not doing. Didn't have any rules that were based on religion in our lives. It was more just family values, which I think they were quite good values, but not necessarily underpinned by some Bible teaching or something. And so, yeah, when I was growing up, we didn't have any sort of anchor. And so as I was getting into my teens, I didn't really have any particular reason why I couldn't be involved in drinking and smoking and partying and wild partying and things like that, which is what I was getting into. And I probably would have ended up really wrecking my life if I hadn't bumped into some Adventist people in Sydney at Circular Quay. I was actually on a working holiday. I was brought up in Africa, in Zimbabwe. And when my father died, I wanted to come and meet my uncle, who was based in Canberra. And when I came over here, I was basically visiting different places in Australia and ended up at Circular Quay one night, going down for a drink down at Circular Quay with a friend who I met somewhere. And when we met these Adventist street witnessing down, there were young people from Waitara Church, and they were just doing some street witnessing down at Circular Quay. And when I bumped into them, I was, very inquisitive, because I was just open to anything at that point. I had no prejudice at all against anybody or any church or anything. I just was open to anything. And so these young people started to have pretty heavy duty Bible studies with me right there on the street, and give me books and all kinds of stuff, which we're not supposed to do when we're witnessing, right? But in spite of them being maybe a little bit extra active in what they were doing, it didn't offend me at all. I didn't worry about that. And they invited me to some of their prayer meetings that were happening at Wahroonga. Don't know if you remember Dr. Florida, who was a doctor here at Sydney Adventist Hospital at that time. That was way back. Anyway, I ended up coming to these Bible studies in a home here in Wahroonga. And that was where the Lord really spoke to me. And I felt like the Lord was calling me to give my heart to him. So I ended up joining the Adventist Church. And then later on, through a very long process of being horribly lost and confused about life, getting married and still not knowing where to go in life, I eventually, my wife and I ended up in Queensland, where I went through medical school at University of Queensland. And that's where I started sort of setting my target on becoming a missionary doctor. And that's also where we started to get much more involved in the church and becoming a more sort of stable individual. And then we ended up launching this project in northern Vanuatu, which has really changed our lives, changed everything for us. So it's been a huge blessing.
The project that you mentioned, is that the school, Mark? The school that you guys were involved with, or just your work?
The school was something that we were asked to do. Our project to go and start this flying doctor service in northern Vanuatu.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, was the sort of initial start, and then eventually we got asked to start the school. And so, yeah, it was a growing thing. And now we're getting into this plan for the Wellness Center, which is probably much more significant in a way compared to the school, because the school is, there's 90 students there, so it's not an insignificant school. But the Wellness Center will probably involve more money. So we're going to be praying that God will touch people's hearts to support the Wellness Center, which is a little bit more involved. Yeah. So that's the plan.
Can you tell us what sort of support you're looking for the Wellness Center? Is there the possibility for people to even donate things, to come and do mission trips? Like, what kind of support is the mission and yourselves in this project looking for?
Okay, Vanuatu Mission doesn't have any money to do this project, but they want to do it. And so what we've agreed to do is to raise the funds for it and try to get support from people perhaps in Australia or New Zealand or beyond, anybody who's sympathetic towards doing an inpatient wellness center. In other words, there's a lot of other wellness centers sort of happening, which are sort of like outpatient wellness centers where people who have high blood pressure or diabetes can come to and get care on a daily basis, and then live at home and visit the wellness center, a day wellness center. But what we're planning on is an actual a wellness center that's actually for inpatients. And so that's going to require a bit more infrastructure, and got this beautiful location, very exceptional circumstances with the national park. And so what we're looking for is financial support to build the wellness center, and then all the stuff inside. As you know, buildings, the shell of a building is only half the expense and half the time. And then for as far as you just mentioned, the idea of people coming to help, we're certainly we're gonna need people to help to run this, and we want to involve people in our staff. We're going to need staff to actually implement this. So the best way for us to do this is to start small, and we're trying to come up with a design that's fairly modular and expandable with kind of a reverse engineering mindset, so that something that starts small has the capacity to grow bigger over time. Because usually with this kind of thing, donations come in dribs and drabs, and you don't always have a big lump sum to start with, like you would if you're doing some corporate undertaking, a business undertaking where you've got you've got investors, you've got a fixed amount of money to start with, and you know where you're going. Unfortunately, you don't have that pleasure with non-profit type ministry, especially pioneering, where the church has no money to do it, but is supportive of it happening. But in reality, the way it works, and this is how it helped with it started with the school, you've got to be able to start small and then grow in steps and stages. And that's for sure, that'll be the way it works with the Wellness Center. So we're going to need support, ongoing support, and we're also going to need an increasing number of staff. So we can't jump into employing a whole pile of people to upfront. We've got to do the hard yards at the beginning. The pioneering stages are the hardest. And then you've got to go past that and get to the point where you can have, if you run it properly and it's appealing to other people to come into, then you'll get good staff to come and operate it. So we're the make it happen people. We're the people that are going to have the difficult stage of starting it. But that, just going through the experience with the school, it looks very difficult. It looks almost impossible. But when we walked onto the school property, it was bush. If you walk onto that property now, you can see buildings everywhere. You can see children being educated, and that's the privilege that you have when you're launching a project or you're pioneering a project. It's difficult, but it's also very rewarding to see what happens afterwards. That's what we're in. More of the same. Yeah.
I was going to ask when the center is up and running, if that is going to be something that you're going to be encouraging mostly locals to run versus like you and your team from Australia.
Well, that's a good question, Zanita. When we went to Vanuatu, we thought we were burying ourselves in the middle of nowhere. We even questioned the whole idea of going, because we thought going to Vanuatu, northern Vanuatu, the southern part, like Port Vila, etc. A lot of people go there. It's like a tourist destination. Whereas when you go up north, you're getting into the sort of, you're getting into the back of beyond. You're getting into the areas that's pretty remote, and not so many tourists go there. And so, for us, we really did question whether it was a good idea to sort of bury our influence and go into this place that was very far away from anywhere. And in some ways, that's really how it felt. When we first went, we really felt isolated. But over time, this little ministry that we established has become, it's really expanded to touch people's lives beyond our province. And we've had patients coming from Port Santo and Port Vila. And amazingly, 3 different television stations, secular television stations, 2 from France and 1 from the UK, came over and made television programs about the flying doctor service that I'm operating, and televised that on national television. The French television program is called Thalasso. It's the oldest television program in France, in French television. And they put us on prime time Friday evening when there's potentially millions of viewers. So I was totally amazed how we managed to score that. I don't know how the Lord worked that one out. But as a result of establishing this project in northern Vanuatu, God has really opened up the opportunities to be in contact with people overseas. And we've had a surprising amount of visitors coming from international locations. We've had, now these are people who are not necessarily coming to see us, but Vanuatu is a yachty location. It's a place where yachties travel through with their yachts, and so we've had people who, it must be on some, I don't know, some website or something that, you know, you can go to Gull Island and meet Dr. Mark or something, because people come there knowing about us, and they know about the plane and things like that. And we've had visitors, yachties visiting us. We've also had journalists come through. We've had volcanologists come through. We've had NGO people, you know, and just tourists coming through, literally from Norway, from Japan, from China, from US, from Italy, from South America, from Israel, from, I can't even number all the places, France, etc. These people have just come to our doorstep and said, "Oh, just your Dr. Mark just come to see you, shake hands with you, and say, yeah, can I have my photo taken with you," or something like that. And you know, it's really, really amazing how there we are in the bush. We thought we were going to have no contact with outside people, and yet people have come from all over the world. So my grand conclusion is this: if patients are already approaching us for wellness treatments from Santo Vila, I've had people calling me up. Word of mouth travels pretty fast in Vanuatu. So when you treat somebody and they get their diabetes fixed, or their hepatitis under controlled, then word of mouth, you know, leads to them calling you up, and they say, "Please, can I come?" or whatever. And I've got people already calling me from around the country to come up to where we are. The problem is we don't have enough facilities to look after these people. There are too many people inquiring. Most of the time I'm trying to encourage them to see their own local doctor and try to follow some lifestyle practices, because the honest truth is I can't deal with all of these people all coming at once. But I suspect that there will be people not only from from Vanuatu, but I have a feeling that it could well turn into people coming from overseas. So what that's going to do is we're going to have to upgrade our quality of staffing to be able to handle communicating across the language barriers, people who can work with English-speaking people or people from overseas who've got maybe higher expectations about standards and things like that. So I think that inevitably we're going to end up with people from overseas and staffing from overseas as well. But that's not what we're trying to do. It's inevitable that that's going to happen. So our aim is to start a wellness center that will meet the needs primarily and initially of the people who are in Vanuatu. And inevitably, it's highly likely that it's going to go beyond that, and then we'll have people from other countries. And my understanding is that the Adventist Church in South Pacific Division has no inpatient wellness center at this point. Maybe there is plans for, I heard there's plans for one in Victoria, and there's possibly others sort of aspiring to it or doing something in that line. But we're going to be one of the few, at least one of the few wellness centers that's operating within the South Pacific Division, which is going to be an inpatient wellness center, having guests coming in and staying with us. So that's what we're aspiring to, is to fill that space. Yeah.
Dr. Mark, we like to get practical on Adventist Record, and practical spirituality is something that, how do we live our faith? And so I wanted to ask you, like, in all the work that you do, the flying, the medical help, the support for the school, what's one lesson, I guess, that you've learned about yourself and your own faith, and finding God in everyday life, that you'd like to share with some of our viewers, people that watch this program now live, or perhaps down the track they find this video or it's shared with them? What's something that you can pass on to us that you maybe have learned in your spiritual journey as you've been doing all these busy things? How do you stay connected? How do you stay grounded? What's something that God has been showing you in your life?
Thank you, Jared. I'm so glad you asked. I really, I'm so blessed to be involved in an active church. And I feel that has become something more important to me than I ever realized it would be. Being involved as a missionary is a great thing, to touch people's lives, to be involved in healthcare and be involved in the school is good. But if that's where it stopped, I would still feel a big emptiness if I was going to church on Sabbath and not being fulfilled in my church life. And to be totally honest with you, I get so much fulfillment out of my work in this missionary work as a medical doctor, and involvement in the school and planting the plan for the wellness center, all of that. But the biggest fulfillment to me is in my church life. And it is really, really, I found this to be so important. We've known friends who were part of churches that were pretty dysfunctional, and ended up worshiping in churches that were riddled with issues, or just going nowhere, lacking in purpose and mission. And in a way, that's what our local church, there was a very small group of Adventists who were worshiping when we first got to Gower Island. And the honest truth is they were also very, very dysfunctional. And over time, this influx of input, not just from ourselves being there, but from other volunteers, South Pacific Division volunteers who are working with us. And then maybe I think that definitely the Lord has blessed the leadership of this little church, so that now we are so involved in a church that's not just program, because you can get really busy in some churches are very program oriented, but at the same time very meaningless and not having a purpose. Whereas this church is actually focused on discipleship, and really focused on actually being the body of Christ to the local people. And that's the glue that holds our mission together. And I just get so much out of being involved in this church. The fellowship is just so wonderful. And it's become, I think, my spiritual umbilical cord. I really get so much out of it. It feels like it's such an important part of my life, to the point where I would be worried about going somewhere else that doesn't have the same connection. So I want to encourage any of our viewers who are struggling with their church life to understand the importance of it, because church life is so important. And that might be a frustrating thing to say to someone who's in a church that's not very that's quite dysfunctional. But seek and you will find it. And there are ways God can help us to encourage our church to be more involved and work together as a team, because it's such a blessing, it's such a gratification. Yeah.
So, church family.
Sorry, Sanita, I'm talking
it's been awesome to hear about. That's right. It's been awesome to hear about what you've been doing and what you've got planned for the future. But before we finish up, can you just direct people where they can find more about you and more about what you've got planned?
Yeah. Okay. We have a website for our what we're doing there in northern Vanuatu. It's forhishope.live. forhishope.live. And forhishope.com. forhishope.com is kind of like an intro to the whole thing. And then forhishope.live is giving a little bit more information on the project. So the number 4, HISHOPE.live. That's how people can contact us. We use the handle on all our social media is forhishope, the number 4, then HISHOPE.live. It's just on the screen there. The U is not necessary, but it'll work with the U. And that website is has got quite a good introduction to what's happening with the project. Yeah.
But the U just popped up.
I just want to emphasize that the Wellness Center is actually a Vanuatu mission
Yes.
initiative. So we're hoping to get a website that's dedicated for the Wellness Center itself, because we're involved in, we've got a finger in multiple things. The Flying Doctor Service is kind of like my personal ministry. We've also got the school, which is a denominational ministry. The church is of course, an Adventist church. And then the Wellness Center is going to be a denominational entity separate from the school. So it's kind of like a mixture of a bag of ministries all working together in harmony. And we've also got people supporting us, including a ministry in the US that's supporting us. And then lots of our friends in Queensland, Southeast Queensland, that are supporting us individually and sending funds to us through what's a little ministry called Lighthouse Ministries. But it's kind of like a combination of different people helping to make this work. But the Wellness Center is, it's a Vanuatu mission initiative. Yeah.
That sounds great, Mark, and we'll be watching with interest as to how that goes. I'm sure it will happen. It sounds like you guys get things done. So when it happens, I'm sure we can run another story and an update for our followers on Adventist Record. But hey, may God bless you and your wife and the church there and the school, the ministry overall, and Vanuatu Mission. It's great to hear. I think I was reading that you guys are Australian and Vanuatu citizens. Is that right? Dual citizens?
Yeah. My wife's Australian, and I became an Australian citizen after marrying her. And then we lived here for quite a while in Australia, and then ended up in Vanuatu, and we got Vanuatu citizenship. In fact, I initially had Zimbabwe citizenship. I inherited a British passport from my dad. Then I became an Australian citizen, and then I'm now a Vanuatu citizen and an Australian citizen. So it's a bit of a mix. Not sure exactly where I'm from. My accent's a bit jumbled. It's all mixed up. But the main thing is we're all heading for the same place, which is heaven. So yeah.
That's right. And it sounds like you're the James Bond of flying doctors with all those passports. Look, it's great. It's great to speak with you. Thank you for joining us. As mentioned, you can support at For His Hope. So check out that in the comments below. Great to have you with us, Dr. Mark. And thanks for dropping by to record while you're in the country.
Thank you so much, Jared and Sunita. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll see you all next week.